Hello, Nitya. Good evening. I had a little bit of network glitch. I hope I'm audible now.
Hi Akash, I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing good as well. Hope you're having a good and easy week so far.
Good week, not an easy week. All is well that ends well. So today is Friday and 6:42, and I can say that there's not much of a heartburn that I'm getting in, that I'm carrying forward to the weekend. So I'm
Weekends.
happy.
Good to know that actually. All's well that ends well is also the motto with which we conduct these Tech Titans to end the week on a high
Wonderful,
note. Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. So, let me introduce you to the audience present over here this evening. We'll have more people trickling in as we go along. So hello everyone, good evening and welcome to this session or discussion rather with an eminent personality, Nitya. And just to give you guys a quick introduction about herself, she's the head of data and analytics currently at Kellogg's, and she has worked in several capacities throughout her career, and we'll get to know from her wisdom, from her experience, and learn maybe a thing or two for ourselves. So thank you for gracing this occasion with your presence, Nitya, and I would like to start by getting to know where it all began. What
Mhm.
sparked the interest for data analytics, this not so popular field back in the days in you, and how did you come along into this line?
What if I say it was sheer accident? Right? Because see, I'm one of the people who kind of you know who believes in things happening and where as individuals we can capitalize on the things happening is by giving our best shot at it, right? So
Right,
probably had it not been data analytics, had it been something else, I would have given my best shot at it and would have probably and touch would hopefully made it big in that, right? So data and analytics, to answer your question, it happened by chance, right? So when I was in IBM, until that point in time when this chance happened, I was doing SAP. I was quote unquote very typical, very traditional SAP consultant, right? And worked on multiple big SAP implementations. I was kind of the go-to person for anything SAP. I was thinking, ho gaya mera set ho gaya, it's all done for me, right? But then all of a sudden, it so happened that at that time, to your point, data and analytics was a budding field, right?
yeah,
People were kind of the way we are looking at generative AI today with some bit of skepticism. It was back then that people were looking at it with some bit of a skepticism in terms of how much value it is going to add, right? So, of course, we were doing a lot of reporting and stuff like that, but how much value would probably a machine learning or an AI will add? A machine learning on itself was a myth back then, right? People are thinking
right,
it
yes,
will not happen. So there was certain a task force which was put together to kind of experiment and see, is it really, or is it just some sort of a bubble? Is it really worth it? We're putting our money in it, right? So that's when all of this happened, and I got the first-hand experience of doing real data analytics, right? In the sense, right? Of course, I don't discredit anything from reporting, because even today most of the decisions are made based on simple reports, right?
right,
uh, you know um, this one, right, analytics, right, AI and machine learning is something which can give additional level of maturity to that foundational reporting and data engineering, right? So that's what I realized, and I had got a lot of aha moments, right, during at that time, when I realized the potential of machine learning, right, and the potential of AI and what it really is and what it has got, the capability of, to do various wonders in future. In fact, I had a bit of a feeling that things are going to come a full circle even back then. So I said, okay, machines are learning from the patterns. Why can't, based on the learned patterns, they can generate something which is as good as what they learned from? That is what is happening today with generative AI.
generative AI,
So I
wonderful.
mean, when that's what I said, like, when you got something, just jump into it, give your best, and then you try to get ideas, right? What can happen in future. Of course, I did not harness on those ideas, I just moved on. But there were at that back at that time some enterprising people, all of the people who are pioneering in the AI field today. Sam Altman, and then all of these people, Mustafa Sulaiman, right, and all of these guys, right, who picked up that thread of thoughts and went ahead and set their own company, right? So, therefore, it's again, this is something which retrospectively I can tell to the people that if you got, I if life has thrown a chance at you, make the best use of it, give your best shot, and be bold in taking the decisions, because a couple of people did that and today they are billionaires.
Absolutely. And hearing you talk, I get a sense that you are pretty invested in this generative AI space and the developments, and you have been sort of a fan of what is going on in the industry out there.
Oh, huge fan, yeah, huge fan, because there is still a very curious and enthusiastic, inquisitive student in me, right? I like to learn a lot. I never feel that I will stop learning ever in my life. So since I keep learning about new things, discovering new things in happening around me, and can't help but feel amazed about all of those things. For example, the recent GPT 4.0, right? It's so amazing. That's probably the closest ever that we have got to artificial generative intelligence, right? General intelligence, right? So this is something which definitely kind of it picks your curiosity at every step, right? Every step you realize new things, you want to learn more, right? And
Right.
generative AI is something that has been satiating the desire for me in terms of learning and expanding my knowledge and doing something new and meaningful. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, where do you think this field of analytics in general is heading towards? Maybe not now, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road. How do you think it will be shaped? It will be transformed? What will be the role of these GPTs and transformers in all of that?
Oh yeah, tremendous amount of it, right? Had had someone asked this question about 5 6 years back, and had I told that we are going to create real humanoids, some things that have come in the Terminators of the world, people would have been would be asking me, "Did you smoke grass? Kitna peg le liya tumne?" Right? But today, people are damn serious about it because people know that it is a reality that's just kind of right in front of our face. So
Right.
what happen in the next 5 10 years is kind of is still speculative, right? It's not obvious, it's speculative, but at least directionally, what we know is that all of this technology advancements are going to come together, right? Let's not look at it very in a unidirectionally from a generative AI angle only, because there are technology advancements happening elsewhere as well. We are talking about quantum computing. We are talking about harnessing the quantum power to kind of get multifold, sorry, improvement in in compute. We are talking about green energy, right, which is going to kind of reduce a lot of energy costs, and therefore we'll not really mind spending a lot of compute on building huge models. We are talking about synthetic biology, right,
Mm.
where it's so easy to kind of now synthesize DNA in somebody's backyard or in their garage, right? And we are talking about advancement in physics, right? Material physics, right? Where where people are coming with new alloys, new metals that can be resistant to whatnot, right? Even if you make a robo and then send them to space, they are pretty resistant to extreme weather, those metals, right? So, I mean, we are talking about multiple things happening together. And this is not the end of it. There are many more things happening together. Now, all of this are going to come together, and then they are going to make one thing possible, which is, I said, like, we can have humanoids, kind of among us in maybe 5 to 10 years. We can have things like, people who are our personal assistants, right? When I say people, the humanoids who are our personal assistant, and then they can not just maintain our schedule, they can even do the investments on our behalf. They will understand us and they can recommend even diet for us, or exercise for us, right? So they
Right.
can completely our PAs or personal assistants, right? Those humanoids. I can also talk about, a lot of good things happening in areas like cancer research, or in pharmaceuticals, in general healthcare, right? Lot of things that we thought weren't solvable, right? For example, medicine, a cure to cancer, for instance, and cure to some of the really so far uncurable diseases, right, is something which is probably around the corner, right? And then other things like, when we say the SDG goals, right, removing hunger, and ensuring fundamental necessities in terms of healthcare and education, all of this are possible when all of these technologies come together, right? And I think we'll be solving a lot of these problems in the next 5-10 years. So world is going to be better on one part. I know that there are pessimists who are saying that robots are going to take over the world. I'm not discounting that possibility. That's a fair possibility as long as we don't behave like a responsible community, a responsible set of corporates, or a responsible set of governments, right? And knowing that we are all responsible people, definitely will not let that happen.
Absolutely agree with you. So the onus is on us on how we are planning
Yes.
to use it, just like any tool, any modernized technology. Um, I'm also quite fascinated with your one of your recent posts on GPT-4o, the recent one that has came out.
Yeah.
So with visual capabilities and some
Mhm.
of its applications in maybe guiding the blind, the visually impaired, into calling for taxis, crossing roads, right? Do you think we'll ever reach a point where
Mhm.
humans can live with the assistance of technology? They won't be needing other humans to aid them. They will be assisted by technology, be it in making decisions or with their daily works or with their impairment. Or maybe if we go on to the darker side, maybe assistance in warfare, maybe assistance in infiltration, in military infiltration and other such things. So since the use is on both sides, how do you think regulation should play a role over here, talking from a larger
Mhm.
context?
So there are two things that you asked. One is it possible? And I would say it's absolutely possible, right? And it's possible on both sides of the world, right? The good part of the world as well as the bad part of the world. And then we have been living in the cusp of both the worlds till now, right?
Yes.
Be it nuclear technology, right? It can be used for creating bombs, which they say ended a war, but it started a cold war in later in the in the world. And also we can use nuclear technology for generating energy, right? So we can do multiple things, right? So we have been anyways living at the in the cusp of where both the good and the bad worlds meet, right? And that's going to continue to happen,
Yeah.
case of generative AI and all of these deep technology also. So it's possible, and we will have to make trade-offs, right? And and therefore, coming segueing into the later part of your question, right? Then how do we ensure that the dark world does not take over the fair world or the good world and all of that, right? So as I mentioned, right, it has to be done at every stage of technology development and adoption and proliferation, right? So start from developing the technology. I'm sorry. So all of these technology companies and the hyperscalers who boast about, okay, or GPT 4.0, Gemini this and that, right? They need to ensure that these systems are built with enough sufficient checks and balances, right? Right from developing the foundational stuff around these LLMs, right?
Right.
Foundational nodes of the neural network, right, starting from the training data to all the weights and the nodes and everything of the neural network. There has to be lot of thought process in order to make this entire ecosystem foolproof in terms of preventing any intrusion or any attack, the entire system going hayway on its own, right? And the entire system being biased, or entire system kind of behaving very irresponsibly. So it has to start from there, right?
Right.
From the people who actually develop these systems. Then it has to go to the next level at the, at the corporates, the leadership, right, the board. They need to ensure that they pay sufficient attention in order to come up with the right control mechanisms, monitoring and control mechanisms, which are overarching on top of what the creators of these technologies do, right? The creative, the product teams do, right? So there has to be frameworks defined, there have to be control mechanisms in terms of audit defined, and we need to score ourselves against the safety aspect of using these technologies, the trustworthiness of this technology, and then we need to hold people accountable. There has to be very clearly defined accountability if something goes
Right.
wrong, and the accountability should not be with the developer or the product creator. It has to be somebody who can move the needle if things go wrong, right? So we need to define the accountabilities well, and all of this has to be done at the corporates, and the corporates need to come together. There's no more siloed world, right? When it comes to such pervasive technologies, all the corporates need to come together and work as a group here. And then the next layer comes when we talk about governments, right? The way corporate competition is real, the the competition among various governments is also real, right? There's a mad rush or a race out there as to who's going to be the first in every technology, right? Be it creating LLMs, the super efficient LLMs, or be it creating quantum computers. Who's going to be the first, right? Who's going to kind of be the most efficient quantum computer in the world, right?
Right.
So there again, the governments need to have exercise a lot of control, and there a lot of things are at play, right? There are some governments which are autocratic. There's one person who makes the decision for the entire nation. There are some governments which can get muddled in the complexities of democracy, right? We need some sort of a blended approach from the governments, at least in terms of these technologies, where there is sufficient upper hand, there's sufficient control, there's sufficient guardrails, there is sufficient authority that a group of people can exercise in order to kind of control any proliferation and bad use, right? In case of, say, cyber attacks, right? That there's state sponsored cyber attacks, which of course can be avoided, right? If the governments are pretty conscious about it. And to your point, warfare, right? A war nobody wins, right? And in a war with robots, and in a war with nuclear powers, the entire world loses, right? So I think there the governments need to step in and ensure that the technology proliferation is controlled and used only for good causes.
Good call.
As I said, there are multiple layers in which this thing needs to be taken care of, right from the developer who's writing code in the product, which gets placed in the product, all the way up to the super powerful deciding authorities and governments.
Makes absolute sense, yes. And it's all about judicious use, as with all things that are precious, right?
And one more thing is, like, as a society, we need to come together. Governments are nothing without people, right? So if we go about telling them that this needs to be done, right? If we come together as a society, I think we can force the governments and we can force the corporates to kind of take necessary action.
Yes. It's a shared responsibility. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You mentioned about your time with SAP, and you were the guru in SAP, or when it comes to all things SAP, right? So, do you also see that space being disrupted? Uh, that has been predominantly dominated by SAP through various products and services. Do you see some kind of disruption, or people maybe relying less upon such uh, industrial or enterprise grade tools?
See, disruptions are everywhere, right? So, SAP and ERP, right? It's a tool. It's not one tool. It's the entire ecosystem which can
Ecosystem. Yeah.
automate a lot of your business processes, right? Starting from your product development all the way up till your sales and after sales services, right? So there are multiple steps in between, and all of this data can be all of this processes and the can be digitized, and then you'll have a lot of data that gets generated through these digitization of processes, right? And SAP helps you not just digitize the process but also optimize the processes, right, and correct them and fix them, and therefore it's a very very useful tool. And generative AI has disrupted SAP in the sense that it's not replacing anything, it's just making it more powerful. Like any other enterprise software, it is making these softwares more powerful, right? For example, think about a CRM application in SAP. Infuse that with a generative AI chatbot. And imagine the wonderful things that this combination can bring, in order to kind of ensure a seamless customer experience, a very good end-to-end customer life cycle, lifetime value. And then, even if you were talking about, say, for example, the sales process, right? Again, imagine a generative AI that can really help identify the deals that a salesperson should prioritize and focus, right? And what kind of upselling and cross-selling that can be done to an existing customer, right? And all of this, the generative AI can just do in a flick of second, whereas before Gen AI, the salespeople had to rely on different reports, had to talk to multiple teams, and spend hours and hours in order to get this insights and knowledge. So yes, disruption is there, but it's not a disruption in a negative sense. It has only added to the existing capabilities of
Right.
SAP.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I'm also curious while you mentioned about sales team as an example, right? Uh, let's say we take the students, a large portion of the audience present here today are students who are going to go into different sectors. A very common query and lingering question in their minds is, with all of these things going on, they hear of data analytics, they hear of generative AI, they hear of data science, they hear of still software development. What should be their focus during their preparatory years before going into the industry? What can be the top, maybe let's say, three things that they should focus on that will help them grow not only now but later in the careers as well?
Okay. So there are two aspects that I want to answer this. From a technical skills, what are the top, and then from the non-technical or the soft skills, right? What are the top that they need to focus on? So from a technical skills perspective, uh, as you rightly stated, right, the world is moving towards more of AI and generative AI, right? But rather than leapfrogging into just understanding generative AI, they need to start from the basics. Start from the basics of data engineering, and and the and the fundamental data science and the fundamental concepts of machine learning, right? Let's not disregard them, because they have been the building blocks to the generative AI systems that we are talking about
Right.
now, right? So start with the foundation. Never leapfrog into, okay, let me do generative AI and the foundation I'll do later, jab naubat aaye, right? So let's not do that, right? Let's start in a structured way from the basic to the advanced concepts. That's one thing. Second thing is, know your area of where you want to kind of deploy your skills, and maybe kind of specialize in them after you have done the basics, right? Basics of foundational machine learning and data engineering, and then learning about the AI and generative AI, then kind of move on to a little bit more specialized area, right? For example, this is what we do, right? When kids study for medicine, right, they do a generic MBBS first, and then they do some
Mm.
specialization, probably reflecting that here. Once you know the foundational stuff, fundamental stuff, right, foundation plus on top of it the AI and Gen AI, what you do is, maybe if your inclination is towards cybersecurity, learn how generative AI can help kind
In
of
that
in the
domain.
problem
Yeah.
statements in cybersecurity. And with by virtue of that, you're not just going to kind of know for sure what sort of technology is relevant, you're also going to understand cybersecurity as a domain. and you're going to
Yes.
understand the problems that organizations face today with cyber attacks and all the various cyber security concerns. Now, other one is, if that's not your forte and you want to go into more of a pharma and healthcare and all, just focus there, right? We are not far away from a time, from a point in time where we could talk about generative AI for cybersecurity, right? Generative AI for healthcare and pharma, generative AI for, say, BFSI, right? So, like we talk about industry clouds today, right? Industry cloud for BFSI, cloud for manufacturing, cloud for supply chain, similarly. So, at that particular point in time, I think, it'll be easy for anybody of you to maneuver into the kind of industry which you feel very passionate about, right? So, this is the second thing. And maybe I'm just thinking what could be another one in terms of technology. See, and also be very cautious about, again, falling back on what I mentioned, right? At every stage in developing the technology, be very cautious about the flip sides and
Mm.
develop technology in a foolproof way, right? Earlier, I remember, right, when I was a developer myself, right? Though I was a very good developer, I'm talking about only the bad developers. Sorry. They used to skip the process of testing and review royally, right? And there used to be bugs that were discovered later, by the end user, right, which was kind of embarrassing. We cannot afford that kind of a margin of error here when we are talking about Gen AI systems. Therefore, right at the build stage, right, these the students that who are listening are going to be kind of building systems from scratch, so they need to be very cautious about ensuring the foolproofness of the system right from beginning, right? So these are the three things that I think about from a technical perspective. From a soft skill perspective, there are just a few guidance and suggestions, because what works for me may not work for everybody, but this is just a reference that you guys can
Mm-hmm.
take into account. That never stop learning, right? That's the first thing. Never stop learning, right? And you cannot afford to not learn, because gone are the times when you learn one technology, you
Right.
stick to it for 10 years and then might as well retire in that. Now every 10 months technology is changing, right? So I think, or not even 10 months, I would rather say 2 months, right? I don't know. This is a mad crazy pace that we are living in, right, of technology innovation. So just never stop learning. Just keep your eyes and ears open, follow the trends, follow the news, right? And see what corporates are doing, right? And being aware of it, and being and always kind of learning on new things, right? Every time is going to kind of keep you, I would say, relevant, even if technology changes, right? So, and the other one is kind of look for new problems, right? As I mentioned, and this is something which probably I would have told a 25 year self of myself, right? Back then, that look for problems, and then focus on the problems. Look for problems that others cannot solve, right? Or they say that they cannot solve because they don't know how to solve, right? So that's where
Right.
innovation would stem from. That's where you can become the Sam Altmans of tomorrow. You can really kind of innovate and come up with new solutions, have your own company, God knows, right? So look for innovative problems and solve the innovative problems with innovative solutions. Don't settle with the status quo, or the or mediocrity, right?
Got that.
And the third one is always stay humble, right? And this is my personal observation, that staying humble really helps. You might be super intelligent, but there is always a gap. Everybody, each of us has a gap, right? And that's where experience plays a role, right? So always be humble, and have the right kind of mentors, learn from the experienced people, right? Listen to them, their suggestions, their guidance, consult them, right? So that humbleness is also very, very important.
Absolutely, absolutely agree with each and every point that you have mentioned. All of these are the building or will become the building blocks for a later
Mm.
parts of the career, right? Now,
Yeah.
and outside of technology knowledge, right? Uh, a major change in landscape, going from academia to corporates, is the work environment, the work culture, right? Fitting into teams, working to collaborate with people,
Mhm.
working or learning to adapt to others, or to communicate with them effectively, how to get work done, even though you may or may not have authority over them. So, how to any advices from your side, from your extensive 2 decades or more of experience, on how to navigate that entire landscape, how to work with stakeholders, with peers, as well as subordinates.
Yeah, true. The thing is, maybe I have been fortunate enough, but I can tell you that, everybody in these organizations are highly collaborative, right? Maybe if we are thinking of those old school ways of working, wherein, the boss is somebody who sits in the cabin, and if you have to go in, ask something, you have to knock the door, or maybe outside there's a secretary, and then nothing of that, right? So, uh, we are increasingly moving towards an open office culture, or no cabin culture, right? So wherein everybody is approachable by everybody, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
even the junior most member of the team can approach a pretty senior person in the team, so that should not be a problem. The only thing is, make these interactions meaningful is what I would urge. Nobody is going to kind of nobody is going to kind of scold you, or judge you,
Mm.
if you ask any question, right? Which might sound silly, but as I said, there are no silly questions in the world, and in at least in the corporate world, right? So don't be kind of hesitant, right? Because everybody understands. All of us have grown through these stages, so we are not jumped to what we are now, from being a college student,
Yes.
right? We
Yes.
have to go through these phases, and back that time, when I was a college student, I had a lot of people who used to kind of help me. Even if I felt my questions were silly, I used to go ahead and ask them, and they were very, very helpful. So, therefore, I think, first of all, don't be hesitant to ask questions, right? And then listen and understand what they're saying, and incorporate that in your ways of working, in your product, whatever you're developing, right? So therefore, maneuvering the corporate culture and the team is not very, very difficult. Stakeholders are also human beings, right? They have also gone through, even if you're talking about, for example, if you're working in a service organization, service provider, and then your stakeholder is somebody who's sitting in the customer's office, right? Who's probably your customer, or somebody who is kind of who is going to approve your product, right? Somebody of authority. So don't really kind of also be very hesitant in kind of opening up your mind, right? What happens is, usually these customers are very, very happy when they hear a lot of perspectives and fresh ideas,
Right.
right?
Yes.
So people very old and experienced like me, haha, who we have kind of a very probably a very traditional way of thinking, if I may, right? Because that's how we have been conditioned, right? Or we have been brought up in this corporate world. Whereas, the students who are coming now, the fresh minds, they have got a lot of fresh ideas, right? Prolific ideas, and sometimes I'm so amazed when I listen to these guys, right? So people like me, we want fresh ideas to come in the conversations. So therefore, even if you're talking to stakeholders whom you might feel they are customers, I should not be kind of, I should be very careful and all. Not like that, of course you got to be careful, but just kind of come up with all the innovative ideas that you have and bring it onto the table, and everybody is going to be highly appreciative of that. So this would be my suggestion of maneuvering the corporate culture, communicating among your team and among your stakeholders.
Basically, learning, growing as we go along, and then of course, uh, not being afraid to put our ideas across.
Not be afraid, not be afraid. Absolutely not. Yeah.
Absolutely, that helps. So, I will probably ask you one last bomb of a question, which is, and since majority of our crowd are from technical background, this is again going to be a bit concerning for them. Generative AI has most disrupted, I would say, in my opinion, the programming field. It's easier than ever to generate a program if we
Mhm.
are good enough with our prompts, if we can specify what we want. And as you mentioned, testing, it can even generate test cases, scenarios, edge cases, all of that. So, do
Mhm.
you think programming is going to be a valued skill down the line? And if not, what can someone do who would be willing to go into these fields?
Do you want an honest answer or you want me to
Absolutely.
be nice?
There's no point in being nice. So let's be honest over here.
Okay. So the honest answer is gradually, if not immediately, programming is going to be obsolete gradually, right? I'm not saying immediately. And I want to be very, very honest here because, tomorrow even my kids are going to pass out and then, I need to be honest, right? But the thing is, that's going to happen not immediately, right? And so we still need people to kind of help us create these machine learning systems or AI systems or generative AI systems. We still need people to kind of help us make them better. We are still not at a stage where an AI can generate an impeccable code. We are still not at a stage where a generative AI can kind of to your earlier point, do the entire SDLC end-to-end life
Hmm.
cycle, right? So until that point we still need people, we still need humans in the loop, as they say, to kind of fine tune this entire end to end
Right.
AI system, right? Verify the code, reinforce the learning into the into the LLM to kind of generate better next time. We still need people to kind of connect the ideation with development, with testing and deployment, everything, right? And change management, everything. We still need people to do that end to end. But having said that, as I said, in the longer run, this will be obsolete. So what I would suggest is that while you continue to learn and hone your coding skills, we also need to be aware and accepting of the fact that it's not a long term solution,
Yes.
and we need to be kind of differentiating ourselves from the rest by learning differential skills, right? That can really help us in future, right? Skills like, as I mentioned, right, focus on one particular domain once you have learned the fundamentals, in order to kind of find how you apply these generative AI systems to solve real problems. And there are some new roles that are cropping up. You're talking about prompt engineers, right? All of a sudden, people, we didn't know what prompt engineers were a
Yeah.
few years back, right? So that is big. That is because prompt engineering is a budding field right now. The way a data scientist or an SAP consultant was back then, right? When those
Right. Right.
waves happened, right? And another thing is that now, since we are talking about more automation, there are going to be more cyber attacks, right? So cyber security and learning cyber security as a concept is also a very prolific thing, because this entire technology is open source now. So it's not only available to good people like you and me, it's also going to be available to bad person also, right? Who can probably make use that to attack an entire public service, PSU infrastructure, a hospital infrastructure, right? Or a banking infrastructure, right? So this thing, right? Cybersecurity or application side is something very, very important for the kids to know, right? Yeah, absolutely. So this is the reality, right? And this is what we need to kind of be thoughtful and mindful towards, because we own our career. Even if it were 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, we should be in a place where we wouldn't regret our choices and decisions.
Perfect. Yes. Actually. And with some doors closed, some new ones open up. I think that is
Absolutely.
the theme here. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
adaptability is the key to the game. So adapting to the new world.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Having said that, I'm going to also throw one curveball that also see how you can integrate technology. For example, a few days back, I was reading Andrew Ng, right?
Hmm.
The father of
Yeah.
AI, as they call it, right? What he said was, and I really liked, right? When you integrate blockchain
Hmm.
and LLM, what you get is something, an agent, a set of agents who can do your entire end-to-end product life cycle, if I may, starting from ideation till testing
Okay.
and deployment, right? And that was a very there's a write up on that, right? How you integrate blockchain and LLM kind of to do multiple things. Not only this, you can do multiple things. So also think through not just from a domain perspective, individual technology perspective, domain perspective, and where you can integrate a couple of these technologies in a meaningful way to solve some novel problems.
Yeah. Maybe thinking out of the box and out of what is already
Absolutely
existing.
thinking out of the box, right? Right, absolutely. We have Elon Musk's and Sam Altman's in the group. They just need to be discovered, right? And the only way is to think out of the box.
Yes. So I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic many of the participants were here today. Some of them will turn out to be big names down in the future. And
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah, and someday they will recollect this conversation that we had and cite us
Wonderful.
in the credits.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. It was
Great.
wonderful talking to you, Nitya, and thank you again for taking your time out on a Friday evening for all of us and having a few words of wisdom with us.
My
Wish you.
pleasure, my pleasure. I always enjoy talking to students, and as I said, that's where these are the innovators and the billionaires of future. So I'm all excited for their journey, and I wish them good luck.
Yeah, I hope they don't forget us when they become billionaires.
They will. You will get a piece of the cake. Don't worry, right? Some sort of equity.
Sure. Have a great weekend ahead to you and to our participants as well. Hopefully,
Thank
talk to
you,
you
and wish
sometime
you the
soon.
same. Yeah,
Thank you.
same here. Thank you. Bye bye.